Iran is over. Last night they were able to launch only 10 missiles over Israel. Everything was intercepted. Also, in the morning there was a strike of 20 missiles. One rocket broke through to the deserted parking lot. There are no injured. At the same time, Israel continues to rule in the Iranian sky, striking wherever it wants. In addition, the main building of Iranian propaganda was attacked. The consequences of the flight were broadcast live. Jerusalem, a few hours before the strike, warned that everyone should evacuate from this area of Tehran. Donald Trump called for evacuating from Tehran in general. America is pulling its troops into the region and apparently can join the operation of Israel. Well, you know, like in a typical American movie, when the cavalry comes at the end. Trump left G7 prematurely, apparently, just to prepare for the operation. For this, it is obvious that there will not be a meeting between Trump and Zelensky, where the president of Ukraine planned to discuss the possibility of buying weapons from the United States. Europe is discussing a new restriction to hit even harder on Russian economic opportunities to continue the war. Russia, in the meantime, continues terror, large-scale attack by drones and missiles on Kyiv. Preliminarily, 14 dead civilians and more than half a hundred wounded. Another positive change in the command of the Defense Force of Ukraine. Major General Nikoliuk headed the operative tactical group of Donetsk instead of Brigadier General Tarnovsky, says Deep State. New commander is characterized by the military in a positive way. Let's hope it will strengthen the possibility of Ukraine on the battlefield. Due to problems with supply, the soldiers of the USSR say that they graze and drink water from the puddles. However, problems arise not only with water and food, and not only on the front line. Native of Orlovskaya Oblast Mikhail Radyshev talked about cases of unscrupulous behavior from the side of individual volunteers. According to him, some of the humanitarian aid collected to support Russian military personnel in the area of special military operations does not reach its addresses. Another Russian military official said that he was part of the so-called healing regiment, a unit where soldiers are sent for treatment. But in fact, they are assigned as completely healthy and sent to be killed. About this and much more in today's Fresh Report, which you can support with your likes, comments, and subscription to the channel. All these actions help promote the video, especially your subscription. For YouTube algorithms, this is an important indicator that allows you to spread the audience to which this video is shown. You can support the channel financially on Patreon, the link to which is in the description, and buy FNVPN. This is a means to bypass blockages that allows you to bypass blockages. We have been working for almost a year, almost a year soon, 2 months to a year, and we successfully allow our users to bypass blockages. Actually, any including those that Roskomnadzor fixes in Russia, you will have access to YouTube at a normal speed, to Twitter, to Instagram, and to everything else that Russia has blocked or will block in the near future. The state should not decide what to watch, listen, or read. You can buy NVPN by the links in the description. With rubles, foreign currency, and cryptocurrency, almost any way is available to you. Well, it is legal in Russia, at least until the purchase of VPNs and the use of VPNs is prohibited. Thank you very much to everyone who buys NVPN and uses it. Well, you get not only a good product, but also support this channel. Well, we move on to what happened in the past day. Israeli planes continue to dominate the sky of Iran, including the capital. The most remarkable was the episode when Israel hit a building where the editorial office of the Iranian state TV channel Iran is located. The moment of the blow got into the live broadcast of the TV channel. At first, in the middle of the blow appeared in the left part of the screen with a general panorama of Tehran, then in the right part where the broadcast was broadcast from the studio. The background music was turned off, paper fragments flew, after which the host left the studio. Soon the frame caught fire and the broadcast was interrupted for a few seconds. For that, Sahel issued an official warning that they are planning to strike on the district of the Iranian capital, in which the TV channel is located, and called on the residents of the district to leave it immediately. Let me remind you that a similar warning was previously made for Gaza and Beirut. The Times of Israel newspaper cited the Minister of Defense of Israel, Israel Katz, who, after the warning from Sahel, said that the Iranian rupture of propaganda and incitement is on the way to disappear. Propaganda kills, and it's good that in Israel they understand this. Israel is also trying to reduce the strike capabilities of Iran. Moreover, dozens of Israelis have become victims of missile shelling, and the number of injured is approaching 600. In addition, one resident of Syria died from Iranian drones or debris, and 5 Jordanians were injured. Screens of the Iranian launchers have been published a few minutes before the launch of the rocket on Israel. The Israeli Air Force reports that more than 20 such rockets were destroyed on the night of June 16, which was in the stage of preparation for launch. On the footage, you can see the staff of the launchers preparing the rockets for launch. It is also reported that more than 120 rocket launchers were destroyed at the beginning of the operation. This is about a third of their total number. This is also important because the reserve of interceptor rockets, especially anti-ballistic ones, is not endless in Israel, as in any other country. Therefore, the best strategy is to shoot the target, not the arrow, which Israel is engaged in, using the air that was conquered on the first day. From the usual stories of Western media, many may have the impression that Iran has already asked for capitulation. However, everything is not so simple, says Beautily. Iran sends a message through Arab intermediaries about the desire to de-escalate tensions with Israel, reports Wall Street Journal and Reiter. But at the same time, there are no signs that Iran is ready to give in to negotiations, says Beautily. Moreover, he threatens to speed up his nuclear program in the event of Israel's refusal to sit at the table, which is a pure bluff. In the case when it is necessary to read in full, Beidel writes, because so far it looks like Iran is trying to twist the eggs of Israel. Iran is ready to stop the hostilities and renew the treaty on the nuclear program. Such messages were passed through Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Oman. The question is whether Israel will sit at the table whose fighters are freely flying over the airspace of Iran. Israel feels that it can continue to weaken the tyrannical regime of Ayatollah in parallel by striking Iranian nuclear infrastructure. On the contrary, Iranian missile strikes did not cause Israel significant military damage. The pause may give Iran time to regroup and form international pressure on Israel. Also, it will be a victory for Iran if it can hold the US back from joining the Israeli strikes. Iran insists that Israel cannot afford a long-term military campaign, so, as a result, it will also seek a diplomatic solution. Iran also believes that Israel has not yet inflicted significant damage to its nuclear infrastructure. To do this, a long-term campaign will be needed, as well as the withdrawal of the United States, especially for strikes on the Ford plant, which is located deep in the mountains. Iran threatens to speed up its nuclear program if negotiations do not begin. It is doubtful whether or not Iran can speed up something right now. There are no signs that Iran is ready to take a new step in nuclear negotiations, say Arab intermediaries. The Wall Street Journal writes about the conditions of Israel, the refusal of Iran to supply uranium. After all, at such a pace, in 6 months it will be able to produce 10 nuclear bombs. Reiter writes a little softer. His sources say that Iran is ready to demonstrate some flexibility during negotiations if the ceasefire is achieved. I will not believe, comments by Tilly, let Allah Amini come out with a public statement. In words, he only says how he is going to punish Israel. The countries of the Persian Gulf themselves are interested in reducing tensions, as they are afraid of the further expansion of the war on the entire Middle East region and ask Trump to influence Israel. Prime Minister Netanyahu, in turn, stated that Israel does not exclude the possibility of eliminating the supreme leader of Iran, Ali Khamenei. He also added that he is not interested in negotiations with Iran. And this is not surprising, I will add for myself, because Israel has actually presented a historical chance to eliminate the problem of the Iranian regime once and for all, and I personally have no doubt that Jerusalem will take advantage of it. As for the forces of Iran, then, judging by the night that has passed, they are no longer there. You probably noticed that there were no shots of rockets at night in the cities of Israel. Iran launched missiles, but it didn't work out very well. It is reported that Tehran was able to fire 10 missiles, 2 salvo by 5, moreover, cruise missiles, and it is much easier to knock them down. Everything was knocked down. The Iranian regime is rapidly approaching a complete military defeat. You probably saw a lot in the last days of messages and comments that it is impossible to win the war without ground operations. This depends on the goal. If your war is defensive like Israel's and not an invading one, then it is possible. Israel does not set its goal to capture Iran. Jerusalem sets its goal to eliminate the threat, and it turns out that they are fine, and all this is due to the first day of June 13. And it is because of misunderstanding what happened then that many commentators skeptically estimated, or some estimate, but there are fewer of them, what is happening. The fact is that on June 13 Iran was destroyed, after which Israel took control in the sky. On this, be Iran smarter, everything would actually be over. The question remains in the plain how much Tigran will drive himself into the Stone Age. I wrote about this on the day of the operation, June 13, that Iran does not have so many options. If they are smarter, then they will just say, okay, we are turning off the nuclear program, and otherwise we will simply disappear as a state from the point of view of finance, from the point of view of industry, and so on. It also seems that the United States is preparing to take part in the operation. I think its incredible success affects this. Trump acts like a policeman in the American militants, but not those who are the main characters and those who come at the very end when the main threat is passed. In the form of Iran's weakness, the US now has a good chance to break in to get almost free political points. On the fact that America will take part in the war operation, it points to several things. Firstly, the relocation of the military. The second U.S. aircraft carrier is heading to the Persian Gulf. As well as 32 U.S. Air Force refueling aircraft flew to Europe from the SANCOM responsibility zone. Secondly, Trump wrote, Iran should have concluded the deal that I told them to sign. What a disgrace and a waste of human life. Simply put, Iran cannot have nuclear weapons. I repeated it over and over again, everyone must evacuate from Tehran immediately. Well, he wrote and wrote, you say. Trump writes a lot. However, he also refused to sign a statement to G7 with a call from Israel and Iran to de-escalate and left in a hurry. Also, the US president commented his answer on his social network. French President Emmanuel Macron said that he left the G7 summit in Canada to return to Washington to work on the ceasefire between Israel and Iran. It's not true. He has no idea why I'm going to Washington right now. Well, exactly, it has nothing to do with the truce. Everything is much larger, on purpose or not, but Emmanuel always confuses everything. Follow the news. We follow Donald, but if it all doesn't lead to the US joining the operation, then it's not clear why all this. Well, as always, we make a mark on the Trump factor, who is ready to change his opinion 15 times a day. But for now, everything looks exactly like the US joining the operation. The basic layout is this. For the US, zero drawbacks and the restoration of the reputation of the force influencing the world. As you remember, since January, Trump constantly threatens the whole world, but he was stopped taking it seriously because these threats are followed by nothing more powerful. The situation in Iran is in full swing, and Trump can't help but see the opportunity to jump in and declare victory. Israel also needs the help of America. Many see it in order to get the only bomb in the world that can hit the nuclear object of Iran, which is deep underground. We are talking about the massive ordnance penetrator. It can only be dropped from a B-2 bomber. Israel does not have these bombs or this plane. The bomb weighs about 14 tons and has a length of about 6 meters. The bomb can penetrate more than 60 meters. And by the way, I'm not sure that even she can handle it, because in this fraud object there are 70-80 meters underground. But what will definitely make the United States take action is its legitimization, and this is perhaps the key thing that Israel needs. Therefore, of course, we will continue to follow, but for now everything is absolutely according to the scenario that we discussed with you. That yes, Tehran has done something stupid, having decided to answer, having decided that he can do something in this war, that after June 13, absolutely nothing, he can't do anything. If foreign aviation rules over your state, then everything, well, in fact, your state does not exist, you are only reacting further. So let's see, the forces of Iran, as we see, even offensive, well, not offensive, but terrorist forces for attacks on civilian objects and civilian population of Israel is coming to an end. And well, now the question is how exactly Iran will take over. You see, when they discuss this topic, they talk about the fact that, well, it is impossible to force something exclusively by bombing. It works when we talk about some terrorist formations, near-state or pseudo-state, but it does not work when we talk about a functioning country. Iran is not a gas. Iran is a giant country, 90 million people, with a huge territory which has an economy which has some development, even rather some than none. Well, it was in fact a superpower of the region. And every day, prolongation of the operation of Israel is minus 5 years, 10 years for Iran, and of course not everyone is happy with this. Therefore, well, if I do not like to try to somehow talk about the future, because there are too many factors, but if it were necessary to make a bet, I would say that some part of the political elite of Iran, I think, led by Khamenei, is not killed because in the event of a murder there may be a civil war. It will simply go to the conditions of Israel. That is, they have a president who is a Pacific Ocean, who is quite pro-Western. And I think that Khomeini will declare that everything is ending. Attempts to destroy Israel, let's live normally, let's conclude deals and all that, and as it were, it will all end. But again, I always make my assumptions based on the rational behavior of the actors, which does not always correspond to reality. Because again, the rational behavior of Iran would be to strike the desert on June 13, or rather on June 13 and not on Tel Aviv. And on June 14 to say, okay, let's make an agreement, and that's it. Well, that is, it would allow Iran to avoid a collapse of its industry, its oil and gas infrastructure, and so on. But Iran decided differently. Now, when new leaders of the Iranian armed forces have already been destroyed, which was appointed 3 days ago, well, all this is only a matter of how much Iran is going to destroy Israel. Well, we move on. Premature departure of Trump from G7 seems to also exclude the meeting of Vladimir Zelensky with the American president. During a press conference in Vienna, Vladimir Zelensky stated that he intends to discuss with Donald Trump the new purchase of arms during the upcoming meeting at the Big Seven summit. Indeed, one of the issues that I will discuss with President Trump at the meeting is the defensive package that Ukraine is ready to buy. We will talk to him about it, and I am sure that we will have such an opportunity. At least I count on it, said Zelensky. The Ukrainian president added that at the moment the discussions on the potential return-free support from the United States are not being held. We are not talking today with America about new aid. Earlier, U.S. Defense Minister Pete Hegseth, speaking at the hearing of the House of Representatives on June 10, reported on the reduction of Ukraine's financial aid in the next defense budget, which is still mysterious because no help was particularly intended there, unfortunately. Meanwhile, the United States canceled the talks with Russia scheduled for this week. Another round of talks between Russia and the United States on the normalization of bilateral relations, which Moscow announced this week, will not take place, said the media of Russia. To this day, another meeting within the framework of bilateral consultations on the elimination of irritants, in order to normalize the activities of diplomatic representatives in both countries, has been canceled at the initiative of the American negotiators. We hope that the pause taken by them will not be too long. What happened is not clear, but apparently on the way to the bromance of Trump and Putin there were some unexpected circumstances, which remains only to be pleased. From my point of view, what happened? Trump realized that Putin has absolutely no influence on Tehran and does not need Trump at all. And with all the good news, the EU has come up with how to ban new gas contracts with Russia. The European Commission proposes to the European Union to ban the conclusion of new gas contracts with Russia using the trade law mechanism, writes Financial Times, and a link to the summary of the proposals received by journalists. This will help to bypass the veto of Hungary and Slovakia, which they promised to impose on the inclusion of this ban in the sanctions against Russia. The adoption of new sanctions requires approval of all EU member states, while when using the trade law, only approval of the majority of countries is needed, writes Financial Times. The proposal of the European Commission is to prohibit the EU countries from signing any new contracts for Russian gas. Financial Times immediately notes that the current short-term contracts must be terminated from the 26th year and the long-term ones from the 28th. Companies will have to provide the customs authorities with detailed information about the gas contracts, which will prove that the gas is imported not from Russia. As a concession, Hungary and Slovakia will receive an additional year to terminate the short-term contracts. Until 2027, said the Financial Times, two sources among officials. The newspaper emphasizes that the proposal is still at the stage of discussion and may change. Well, I will remind you that the main defense of Ukraine is not even sanctions, not endless discussions, and not even the help of allies. The main defense of Ukraine is its army, so we continue to support it in every way. And, in fact, today it will be a collection of vehicles for the fortification of the engineering supply group of the 53rd Ministry of Internal Affairs. Here is their appeal to you. Despite the strong health, we are a group of engineering supply of the 53rd Separate Mechanized Brigade of the Ministry of Internal Affairs. We are building a line of defense of our state in the Donetsk direction. Unfortunately, we have to lose in technology. We are in need of a self-sabotage for the organization of effective work. We appeal to the community of YouTube and Telegram channels. Michael Nacke and Michael Nacke personally with a request to help raise funds for self-sabotage. Thank you very much. Glory to Ukraine. Here is a QR code for Monobank. In the description you will find Monobank, PayPal, USDT, TRC20, connect to CryptoShakes. I saw from the last meeting that they're active again. Thank you very much. This is a big meeting, a very important meeting. We are talking about the fortifications in the Donetsk region where the main Russian offensive is taking place. It is incredibly important to help Ukrainian defenders to stop the Russian advance. It will lead to the end of this war. In general, I am of course participating in the assembly. I hope you will also participate. The only thing is that do not donate. If you are from Russia, do not donate to any national team to the Ukrainian army. If you are from Russia and are not sure that you can do it as anonymously as possible and protected, because good adequate people are worth the weight of gold. If you understand that you need to help Ukraine, then you are an adequate person. This means that you do not need to do exactly what will lead you to Russian prison. You are useful at will, say, communicate with relatives so that they do not go to war. This is also a huge contribution to the restoration of this monstrous war. Russia has hit another massive blow on the cities of Ukraine. It could be said that so far the attention of the international community is tied to Israel and Iran, but Putin has long shown that he does not care about the opinion of the international community. In Kyiv, according to preliminary data, as a result of a massive hit by the Russian Federation, 14 people died, 55 were injured. Unfortunately, these figures will probably grow. This was reported by the head of the Kyiv City Military Administration, Simir Tikashenko, who was killed and injured on Telegram. He noted that the information will be clarified. On the night of June 17, Russia delivered massive strikes on Kyiv. The Russian Federation attacked the Ukrainian capital with drones, cruise missiles, and ballistic missiles. Most of the buildings are located in a few districts of the city, mainly in Salvo, where the dormitory of the National Aviation University was damaged. Several high-rise buildings, one of which has a completely destroyed entrance where the rescuers work, are being freed from the rubble. Markovovili Klitschko stated that as a result of an enemy attack in the capital, more than 40 people were injured, of which more than 30 were hospitalized. During the shelling, a U.S. citizen died. Also at dawn on June 17, Russian strike drones attacked Odessa. Despite the active defense of the SSU, numerous destruction was recorded. There are 13 people hospitalized at the medical facility. People may be under the rubble. Liquidation of the consequences of the Russian attack continues, said the head of OVA, Kuiper. As always, the details of the Ukrainian strikes delivered a few days ago continue to come up. The operation of the Nemnomysky nitrogen was suspended after the attack of the BPA on June 14. As it became known to Austria as a result of the attack, the BPA on the territory of the ANV Nemnomysky nitrogen plant, the doors, windows, and premises of one of the workshops were knocked out. Also, the roof of the canteen and the anti-drone protection of the plant was damaged. 800 employees of the chemical plant were waiting for the attack in the bomb shelter. Evacuation was not carried out. The work of the enterprise had to be stopped. The attack on the industrial zone of the city was confirmed by the governor of the Vorpal region, Vladimir Vladimirov. The ANV Nemnomysky nitrogen plant is one of the largest manufacturers of nitrogen fertilizers in Russia. At the end of May, another enterprise was attacked in the Tula region with the same name, Azot. Two factories, Everhima, Nemnomysky Azotny Zavod, and Novomoskovsky Azot, were sent to the Sverdlov factory in Dzержinski, Nizhny Novgorod region with at least 38,000 tons of vinegaric acid and almost 5,000 tons of nitrogenic acid. According to Reiter, these substances are used to produce octogen and hexogen, which, in turn, are used in artillery shells. VSU staff also confirmed strikes on the chemical plant, which, according to the department, produces the necessary substances for the production of ammunition and rocket fuel. 8 servicemen were killed and 12 were injured. As a result of the blows of HIMARS on the bus of the Russian army in Makivka, the sources of ASDRA reported. On June 13, 8 Russian servicemen were hit on the bus of the Russian military in the occupied Makivka, Donetsk region. It happened near the abandoned AZS. ASDRA found out on the street of Avtotransportnya. According to the sources, as a result, 8 Russian servicemen were killed and 12 more were injured. The majority of them belonged to the military unit 71443. In addition, the bus pass, which belongs to the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation, was destroyed. Other 3 buses, the military KAMAZ and the Ural, were damaged. Moving on to military actions. Directly on the line of contact in the Kursk region, the Russian rear is still restless, says Deep State. The defense force is actively striking at the rear of the enemy in the Kursk region. The Sting Special Unit Ballista destroyed the SAO-2S1 Jivas Diko. In the Sumy region, the enemy uses only infantry. In the best case, we attract motorcyclists and light vehicles. However, the enemy rear has enough gunpowder. It is on it that the pilots of the defense force hunt, the analysts report. When strikes on the Kursk region, not only drones are entering, but also West production cabs. One such strike is described by the War Archive project. MiG-29 fighter makes an accurate airstrike controlled by the Izum hammer bomb on a group of the Russian infantry of 20-30 people and a battle kit from the village of Lokot, the Kursk region. In the meantime, the MZniks continue to correct the excessive orders of their colleagues in the Sumshina region. For example, this is what the online blogger Anatoly Radov writes. I'm in the Sumshina region, the village of Zevisu. Zakras are making a video about the last attack a week ago. Then our stormtroopers came in and left and the fortifications did not come. I translate from Russian to Russian. Usually the assault group goes into battle first, which even if it succeeds bears significant losses, which does not allow to withstand counterattacks. Therefore, usually the fortifications are sent for the assault group, that is, the group of fortifications where relatively fresh fighters take positions. They're by stormtroopers and prepare for defense. So this time the Russian stormtroopers moved away to lick the wounds, and the fortification group did not come for some reason. Perhaps due to the mess in the administration or was destroyed along the way. The Ukrainians looked and again occupied the empty village, which does not prevent the Zetniks from heroically coloring. It reminds us again why it is impossible to believe the Z-channel message. Without confirmation from the Ukrainian side, the South Donetsk region has recently turned out to be rich in taking credit points. Recently, the ZVNKOR Vladimir Romanov told about the situation in the village of Kamer, where the northern part of the village was taken only by paper. Now, the Russian military officer Svyatoslav Golikov explains the same situation in Alexeyevka at the junction with Pokrovsky. That's what he writes, to the question of the credit of taking their settlements. On June 9, the 114th Brigade of the 51st Army was reported on success in the Novopavlovsk direction. As a result of a rapid and accurate operation, the settlement of Alexeyevka went under our control, he quotes the message. At the same time, according to the ground information, Golikov continues, under control at that time there were only the first 3 streets. On June 12, the release notice of Alexeyevka was published already on the official resource of the Ministry of Defense. Meanwhile, Meanwhile, according to information from the Earth on June 15, the enemy in Alexivka is present in the goods. The battles continue. Moreover, the houses near which the fighters with flags for the video of the 114th Brigade were filmed were not detected by air reconnaissance in Alexivka itself. I have already paid attention to the false reports about the 114th Brigade in the village of Shevchenko in January, and Andriivka in March writes to Golikov, that is, a stable trend for misleading the current command, as well as the neglect of the current command itself. In a timely clarification of the actual situation. Nevertheless, there are real advances in this direction too. Deep State marks the tactical successes of the Russian troops in the area of Berlatsky and Nopal. The South Donetsk direction remains very dangerous. Moreover, according to the General Staff of the Soviet Union, it takes second place in the number of Russian attacks after the neighboring Pokrovsky direction. The situation in the Limansky direction is also difficult, and for both sides, Stanislav Bunyatov tells about the Ukrainian military case. Here's what he writes: the enemy does not stop trying to storm our positions. Today's attacks were small, but they tried to break through persistently. However, they were destroyed. Some were taken prisoner. At the interrogations, the Russians say that the infantry is on the verge of demoralization. They do not want to go on the offensive. None of the groups sent to the assault did not return. At the same time, the logistics of the direction remains complicated. The route is under close control of the BPA on the optical fiber. Therefore, the movement often depends on luck. Drones are constantly hanging over Liman, but the dense construction of the city does not allow the Russians to completely visually control the perimeter. This is why Liman still remains a relatively safe and important logistical hub, reports Bunyatov. In fact, the Liman direction is also interesting in the fact that after the capture of Belogorovka, the last territories of the Luhansk region under the control of Ukraine remain on it. As Anatoly Radov clarifies, this is a region with already non-existent villages of Nacke, Novogorovka, and Grekovka, as well as most of the Serbyansk forest. Let's note that in 3 years and 4 months of war, the Russian army failed to completely occupy not a single region of Ukraine, which they recorded after the beginning of the full-scale. In the case of the ICC, Yegor Fursov wrote another extremely interesting post about the evolution of drones and their importance for the battlefield. We used to think that the gray zone, due to the control of the sky, would be 10-15 kilometers from the front line, he writes. We were wrong. This zone will be 30-50 kilometers. At the end of this year, the flights of FPV drones in Kramatorsk, Slavyansk, and Dobropolye and 25 km from the front line will become the norm. They are already flying, but so far these are the only cases that can become commonplace over time. Drones will be looking for trucks on the routes, complicating our logistics. Services such as Novy Pachne can limit their work. All the cities of the Donetsk region will fall under the attack wave of high-precision drones. Zaporozhye, Yunkerson, Nikolaev, Sumy, and even Kharkov, not including that over time we will see more and more aircraft-type FPV drones in the suburbs of Kyiv. Their main danger is that they destroy logistics, destroy moving unprotected targets. Therefore, attacks on infrastructure objects where the classic PVO will be powerless will take place. But you can counteract, you just need to be prepared and act on warning. The defense forces and the local administration already need to create detachments to fight the drone threat from those who do not belong to the mobilization. Men 60+, women, citizens up to 25 years, veterans. The government has already given permission to create such DFTG volunteer formations of territorial villages. Volunteers need to be trained on how to detect and knock down drones. It is necessary to develop a system of their interaction and subordinates. You need to buy anti-drone weapons. Spectral drone analyzers organize special shooting courses. And I repeat, all this needs to be done right now. It is necessary to build tunnels on the entrances to cities or at least tunnels from special protected nets. By the way, the enemy has been doing this for a long time because they were taught. We also started, but only in prefrontal cities. We used to think that there was a drone revolution. In fact, this is a large-scale evolution that will develop rapidly thanks to new technologies and methods of counteraction, he writes. And this technological war can be won if we take a step forward, says Fursov. I am absolutely right. And let's hope that this trend, this direction is aimed at the efforts of the Ukrainian army. Another positive change in the command of the Ukrainian Defense Force. General Mayor Nikoliuk headed the operational tactical group of Donetsk instead of Brigadier General Tarnavsky, says Deep State. According to many well-known military personnel, General Nikoliuk is one of the best generals in the armed forces of Ukraine, analysts say. For a long time he remained in the shadows, but with his arrival to the position of the head of the headquarters of the TG, the changes to the most problematic operational tactical unit have finally begun in Donetsk. Nikoliuk is respected by honest officers and afraid of all the heads of the headquarters of the brigade who are used to lying. After all, Viktor Dmitrievich can easily check their words. Another positive assignment to the VSO. We wish General Nikoliuk success at the post of commander of the TG, because taking into account the number of brigades, problematics, and divisions, it will not be an easy job. The TG shows positive changes in comparison with the Lutsenko era, but still remains a Kamaz, which is difficult to control. An interesting fact, on September 23, the Russians sent a request to Drapatov and Nikoliuk for their participation in the control of the ATO. So a good sign, and we really hope that this is a positive change, which will positively affect the combat actions. Before we move on, I want to correct one episode from yesterday's report. The video published by Budusov was not with Russian military, but with the Brackeneers on Sakhalin. Therefore, no, these were not Russian military. Russian no-contacts channel demonstrates the consequences of the supply problem that Russian military experienced. In the video, the USRF fighters say that they strain and drink water from the puddle. But they don't become goats because they are already goats. We have the consequences of the fact that due to strikes on logistics, even the delivery of water and provisions is associated with a great risk for life. However, the problems arise not only with water and food and not only on the front line. A native of the Orlovskaya region, Mikhail Radashev, told about the cases of unscrupulous behavior from the side of individual volunteers. According to him, part of the humanitarian aid collected to support Russian servicemen in the zone of special military operations does not reach its addresses. Dear friends, not all the assistance that is collected for our soldiers in the zone of special operations reaches its place of importance. Radashev claims that some volunteers master some of the assistance delivered. For example, Artur M. Natsia Canyon in our district. What is the interest in doing this? You think he does it just like that? Of course, part of the assistance is stolen. Also, Radashev mentions another volunteer, Alexander Pulikov, who lives in the Kram district, whom he also accuses of appropriation of a part of the assistance. The prosecutor's office will sort it out, the investigative committee will do the same. Mikhail is sure that those guilty of appropriation of the assistance will be punished by the appropriate structures. It is not surprising that the volume of funds that volunteers, activists, and funds are collecting for Russian military has sharply decreased in 1924. This was found out by Verska, having analyzed several thousand messages in dozens of Telegram channels. Last year, volunteers and activists studied by Verska channel collected about 12 billion rubles for the military. This is 3.5 times less than the indicator for the 23rd year, 39.1 billion rubles. At the same time, the number of posts about the collections has decreased significantly from 13,700 to 13,100. During the first 2 years of the war, the money was collected instantly. Now, the collectors have to resort to various tricks to get the required amount at least for a month. For example, to announce the day of the tablecloth or ask each subscriber to throw at least 40 rubles. I'm already tired of this. You will always ask for money for the SVO. We are also tired. Well, come on, tell the NATO we are Nazis. I'm tired. I'm sure they will understand and let you rest, write the volunteers in one of the posts in 1925. At the same time, according to the military, not all help reach the front. Every time we received humanitarian aid, we had to record a video with thanks to show who it was and so on. One of the combat participants told in the video. In general, look, what are we fighting for? You're fighting for the fact that Russian volunteers would steal everything. Like Kirill Fedorov, who bought Ferrari, like Roman Alyakhin, who bought Beziker, so to speak, Yekaterina the Unknown, who also stole everything together with Puzik. This is super, this is class, we support this. Second, so that Russian security forces began to actively pursue volunteers and look for fraudsters among them, and threw everyone in a row. Knowing Russian security forces, this greatly complicates the life of volunteers. Third, so that the Russian state makes the front forbidden by private volunteers. It would be great, because it really supports the front very seriously. I don't like the word volunteer. Volunteer is a good word, but they are assholes who sponsor the fascist occupation army to kill people in Ukraine. So, in short, they really cover many needs of Russian military personnel. As well as Ukrainian volunteers cover the needs of Ukrainians. The other thing is that it is Russia that chooses to continue the war, not Ukraine. But it doesn't matter, we have discussed it many times with you. In short, in any case, the worse for them, these Russian donators and those who collect money for the Russian army, the better and the less likely the Russian will be at the front. Therefore, we support all this very much and it decreases further. Accordingly, we support Ukrainian volunteers with you, we do not support Russian. More precisely, we support the Russians when they want to tear up all the money, buy themselves an apartment like Montan, cars like Kirill Fedorov and Roman Alyakhin, and everything else. Do the same thing? Why do Russian deserters prefer prison to war and how to reduce the sentence? They told an important story in the edition. In the mobilized Vladimir from Lugansk was sentenced to several years in the colony of the settlement on the matter of self-reliance. He shouted with joy, his family members were also licked, a stone fell from the shoulder. My younger child is 1 year old and he will at least know his father. And now I know that my husband is sitting, the door of the prison will open and he will come out a completely free person, says his wife Alina. In 1918, 1918, Vladimir and his relatives, tired of shelling, moved from the occupied Russian troops of Lugansk to Russia. They all received Russian passports, and in the autumn of 1922, immediately after the start of the mobilization, Vladimir received a notice. After serving for 2 years, he was injured in the leg and went on vacation. Vladimir decided not to return to the battlefield. After walking for a few days, the man turned to the lawyer and filed a complaint with the defendant. Most of all, Vladimir's family was afraid that they would be given a conditional term and would be returned to the war. In the case of a conditional term, the military is not discharged from service. Unlike the real punishment, the lawyers explained an important story. In the case of Vladimir, who decided to sit down, not a single one. In total, according to the research of important stories, the Russian army deserted at least 49,000 soldiers. Starting from the spring of 1924, the number of deserters who wanted to give up and get a term was growing. They told an important story and a call to conscience. According to lawyers, you can avoid punishment according to the most severe article of deserting, having received a relatively small term for the Volga itself. Do this, you need not to delay the application of confession and do not show intentions to leave the service forever. Well, in general, prison instead of war is a great choice, much better. That is, you will remain with your limbs, you will remain alive, it is better not to do anything else at all. To do this, you need to stay away from the Russian army from the beginning. But of course, the choice between war and prison seems obvious to me, and it is good that for many this begins to come to an end. Another explanation of where the million of killed and wounded Russians from the General Staff of the Russian Federation came from. Arshiganov Suleiman Huseinovich, a military officer of the 353rd Fire Brigade, a military unit of the 1086 from the village of Darban, Chechen Republic, said that he was part of the so-called Recovering Regiment, a unit where soldiers are sent for treatment. But in fact, they are assigned as completely healthy and sent for destruction. Suleiman stated that there are heavily wounded among the soldiers. There are one-legged, one-handed people after serious operations. Instead of rehabilitation, they're subjected to documents. They remove diagnoses, are assigned as suitable services, and are included in the assault squad. The fighters are preparing to be sent to the front line, despite their serious health condition. According to the serviceman, he has already participated in one of such assaults, from which only a few survived, and now he is thrown back into the fight, despite the fact that he also needs treatment. The fighter addressed Ramzan Kadyrov, hoping that he interferes in the situation. The commander of the regiment, according to Barshigov, is a kind of Salihov. Together with the Zampolites, they, according to the statement, bear personal responsibility for what is happening. What is called luck, which of course will not coincide with his. Death. Usually I do not talk about the so-called work of the Russian special services, but here is a completely unique case. An ex-commander of the Ukrainian special forces who has moved to Russia is arrested in the annexed Crimea. Sergei Solonkov, a former lieutenant colonel of the internal troops of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Ukraine, who took part in the rampage of protests on the Maidan, was arrested in the annexed Crimea in October of 1924, says Media Zona. After the annexation of the peninsula in 1914, Solonkov vowed to Russia, explaining this by the fact that he did not want to serve as a Russophobe and a nationalist. He headed a battalion in the internal troops of the Ministry of Internal Affairs of Ukraine in Sevastopol. Later he went to the fleet, commanded the cadet division in Buryatia, served in Murmansk region, and was awarded a medal for his difference in service. Initially, the FSB accused him of trying to acquire an explosive in the internet, and Solonkov admitted his guilt. Later, he was charged with confidential cooperation with foreigners. May 25, the case went to the Supreme Court of Crimea, where the judge reviewed the grounds for a more severe qualification. According to the media, the article about the state treason may be discussed. Now Solonkov is in prison. At the time of the arrest, he was no longer in the ranks of the security forces and lived in Simferopol. He has 3 daughters. In Ukraine, Solonkov is declared on the wanted list. He is accused of treason and deserting. So here's the treasurer. Everyone is a treasurer. In the regular section, I didn't send you there. A participant of his recorded a video address to the president because of the lack of action of the authorities. I don't get a job anywhere because I have no spirit. Nikolay Baranchikov went to the combat zone where he lost both legs when fulfilling combat tasks. Having returned home, he can't get a job and get the salary he's supposed to get. They can't help me with an apartment either because I can't get a VVK. And all the government salaries, as you said, were supposed to be paid $1 million or something. The governor doesn't pay us anything either. The soldier not only can't get the proper salaries, but also has to pay a large amount of the collector's company for the loan. Which, according to Nikolai, he didn't take. I have to pay some collector's company. I don't even know because I didn't take it. And you know why I didn't take it? Because I was in the hospital. I allegedly took 8,000 rubles, now I have 31,000. Judge Machin from the city of Dmitrovsko, Orlovsko Oblast. The court made a decision. They were talking to me rude as a participant in their own, I think. Only one girl spoke normally there. They didn't even consider that the disabled of the first group took 18,000 rubles from me, and they left me with a child at least 14 years old. Despite statements about state support and help from the funds, Nikolai claims that there is no support for veterans. There is no help at all. There is no protection from anyone. You say that you give away cars to someone. Well, who are you giving it to? Give at least simple ones. And will you continue to say that this is all propaganda, Ukrainian? This is not propaganda. You can come to me in the city of Dmitrovsk, the Orlovskaya Oblast. Satirical, the government. I don't have two legs and I fought for Russia. After that, I still can't come to my senses and recover. Such is the fate of those who fight for the Russian army if they are lucky to survive. Although, can we call such a life a luck? The question is open. The Persian region, a former Zek, a current participant in the war with Ukraine, stabbed his wife. As it became known in Astria, this happened in the village of Yusova in the Perm region. On June 13, 49-year-old Andrei Isipov, being drunk, stabbed his wife with a kitchen knife in the stomach out of jealousy. She died on the spot. Isipov, in the case of the military unit 74268 Scovia. According to sources, he signed up for the war relatively recently, on April 25, and on May 1 he went on vacation due to illness. Then he decided not to return to the front. Previously, the man was repeatedly judged for theft and once for beating. For the last time, he was judged on the 23rd for theft due to significant damage. He received a conditional term. The other hero of the SWO, fortunately, did not cause harm to the surrounding residents of Makhachkala. He cut his throat in the branch of the bank. The eyewitnesses say he shouted that the Ukrainians would take him captive. Everything happened in the Tsetsum district. According to the eyewitnesses, the man got up at the door of the bank's office, grabbed a knife and began to cut his neck. A crowd of people gathered around him. As the residents claim, the man returned from the SWO. He asked the bank to recruit his son. He shouted and was afraid that the Ukrainians would take him captive. According to this database, the man's name is Rassel. He really participated in the SWO. He was taken to the hospital. The SWO is not a joke, especially when you fight in the fascist occupation army. Therefore, stay away from any Russian military. On vacation, wherever else, these are people who are dangerous to themselves and to you. Michael Nacke was with you, and see you soon. All the best. Bye.